104.7 The Cave. KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Now, it's time for Ned Talk.
Yep, it's our pregame Ned Talk show right here on 104.7 The Cave. Pregame, I mean, I guess it's preseason, get you all hyped up for Thursday night. Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. We'll do another show 5 o'clock Friday, but right now, let's talk about everything that's happened this last week. First of all, the Chiefs played their final preseason game and, went pretty much as expected. The Chiefs did what they needed to do.
Didn't play anybody. That's what they expected to do. And, I mean, they did not have any lineup. Mahomes didn't play, and various and sundry other varsity, so to speak, players did not play. They didn't want to get any injuries, and they won the game 33-32. Come on. That's what kind of credibility you have with that final preseason game. But when they kick it off on Thursday night at Arrowhead, and you're right, we'll be on the air at 5 o'clock Thursday afternoon with the Chiefs pregame show, they will be.
Yeah, will Patrick Mahomes play that day?
I suspect he probably will, yes. And I suspect he'll probably play the whole game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what about Travis Kelce? You think he'll play?
Oh, I know he'll play. The guy in question is Chris Jones, whether or not he's even signed there.
If he signed,
I think he will.
If he signs, I don't think he'll play. I just say,
au contraire.
Well, okay.
They're asking for it. Shape to play right out of the gate like that.
If he says he is, then the coaches will acquiesce and say, "Yep, you get on in there because we need you." But I do think, judging from all the reports that are going on, and there's a lot of talking, and frequently, well, you have to have the embers to get that bonfire burning, and I think those embers are the embers of negotiations and the give and take and so forth and so on. I really feel like he'll play.
I'm Joe Westen. That was Ned Reynolds you heard talking. Josh Roberts chimed in there for a second. Alex Scott has been silent so far. But here we are together. Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. Brought to you
Alex Scott.
Brought to you by The Dive on Patton. It has been an interesting week for the Kansas City Chiefs. There was a guy, and Ned, you probably have to help me with his name. He had a tremendous game last Saturday, wide receiver, and I was reading a lot of the Twitter comments, and there was a bunch of, this guy makes the team. He is going to be the team. Please tell me he's going to be on the team. And then the next day, Chiefs trade him to Carolina.
That's the young man who they had a pretty good deal for with the Carolina Panthers. You say he has to make the team. You look at their receiving core, and they had so many very good receivers. They may not have the highest quality receiver, whomever that might be, but they do have a whole bevy of individuals who get in there and play a solid game and catch the passes. That's all you need. And when you get a good deal, you have to give up something, and they did with the individual who they sent to the Carolina Panthers. But by the same token, they're not hurting at all for receivers. They're very, very good.
I sent Mike the intern a text, and I said, "What do you think about this trade?" And he goes, "Not that guy. No, not that guy." And then turn around and something that you don't see teams do very often in sport, and that is trade in their own division, and they got a defensive lineman from the Las Vegas Raiders. I went through all three names, by the way, before I said Las Vegas Raiders. Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. That's it.
Yeah, he's a kid named Farrell, in his second year out of LSU. He's huge.
Yeah.
That's what they were looking for. He is 6'4", 330 pounds. And when you have somebody like that, they may not be the disruptor. He comes in because they're taking a chance that Jones won't be in the lineup. I think he will be, but by the same token, you get a guy like that in there. He was just so tough to move. While he may not be the rushing disruptive force, he may be the immovable force that they're looking for. 330 is pretty tough to move around.
Really honestly, do you think Chris Jones comes in and plays Thursday?
I do.
Anything that you've heard that pushes you in that direction?
Just what I said earlier. The negotiations have now reached a point where everybody's talking. And when you have talking going on and both sides allege that they want to come to a deal, what I read most recently was that the Chiefs have upped their offer to $24 million a year. And Jones has dropped his demand, or reported demand, that he be paid the same as Aaron Donald of the Los Angeles Rams. He's dropped that demand. So they'll come to an even point, maybe $27, $28 million a year, which, hey, folks, that's a lot of money.
Really?
He's already going to make a lot of money. What on earth? Well, ego is what you're dealing with.
Okay, that's what Ned says. Alec, what do you say?
Oh, I am still shocked it hasn't happened yet. I would have bet money that they would have had this resolved by now, and he would have been in the latter stages of camp. But here we are. If they get a deal done between now and Thursday, I do think he plays. I would not be shocked if he's on a pitch count, so to speak. You know, maybe they bring him in for critical third downs, give him a series off here and there. Just, you know, it's one thing to be in great shape. It's another thing to be in great NFL shape. That being said, if there's a week to be out of great NFL shape, it's week 1 because more people are going to not be in that. You're going to see more cramps this week than any other week. This will take a toll, and they'll hit an intensity level guys haven't hit yet. But as far as the money goes, you know, you got 2 Super Bowls on your resume already. You play for notoriety, you play for wealth, and he's already got notoriety and legacy going for him with 2 Super Bowls. So now he's focused on the money. And, you know, as someone who won't make $27 million this year, I can understand why someone would want to, but...
Josh, what do you think?
I think you reach a point where what is the difference between 21 and $27 million? I mean, unless you're completely financially irresponsible, you're not going to be able to spend that much money in your lifetime or in your children's lifetime. I don't care at this point. I'm done with Chris Jones. I don't care if he goes to the Packers. I don't care if he retires. I don't care if he holds out for the rest of the season. I think he's a joke at this point.
You've been hearing some rumors that they might trade him.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a rumor that the Packers are interested in him and that they were talking about some kind of trade deal, some kind of proposal. I'm sure he would have to approve it because he probably has a no-trade clause in his contract. But I don't care at this point. I mean, he has this golden opportunity, and he's squandering it. He's squandering it with his talent, because his talent's not getting any better as he sits at home eating Cheetos and drinking Pepsi.
I'm pretty sure he's not doing that.
No, he's not.
And
yeah, he drinks Coke.
And he gets older by the
on.
minute. And defensive linemen don't last that long in the NFL. So
I have a hard time with all this because I've listened to the rabid Chiefs fans, which I would count you in kind of that category, during the course of the week, and I've listened to them say, oh, forget it, move on, the guy's a joke, whatever. And then I want to see how quickly it changes when he signs and gets a couple of sacks under his belt. Oh, he's the greatest. I'm glad we re-signed him.
Well, and even you said, Josh, defensive linemen don't last that long. I think that's a peek into his mindset of wanting the money because he's realizing I've got only a finite amount of time left to get a big bite of the apple, and now is one of those times.
I have a friend who posed this scenario. What if Chris Jones doesn't want to play anymore? And so this is his way of saying, I don't want to play. I'm only going to play if you pay me stupid money.
No.
Don't think that's the case at all. I think he has a desire. He's 29 years old, and that's not old, for heaven's sake. He could get out there. He does have the injury factor because all players do. The rate of attrition in the NFL is monumental, and you're probably going to get hurt. It's a contact game. No, what's really interesting is some small nation in Micronesia, which he's probably planning on owning before with that kind of money.
Yeah.
You're listening to Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show. It's brought to you by the Dive on Patton. To watch the Chiefs games downtown this year in the Patton, in Dive on Patton. They'll take really good care of you there. We're talking about the Chiefs and Chris Jones. That's the major story that's going on in the Chiefs world right now. Will he, won't he, what will happen? And we've heard all the differing opinions on that. Let's talk about the cuts that the Chiefs made this week. Any surprises for you, Ned?
I thought they were going to keep on the regular roster, and he still may be. The young man whose cousin played for Oklahoma and who's now with the Denver Broncos. And this guy had a great training camp, wonderful training camp, running back. But they put him on the taxi squad instead, or the practice squad. That was one. The release of Shane Buechele, and he hasn't signed on with anybody. I thought
he did sign.
I think someone went to the Buffalo practice squad.
I take it back. He did. He signed with somebody. It may have been Buffalo. May have been Yes, it was. It was the Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills signed quarterback Shane Buechele to practice squad.
So indeed, he is with another team now. That surprises me because he has the Chiefs' entire playbook. He knows, and he's a smart kid, Southern Methodist kid. While he has not been a regular on the team, he knows fully well what the game plan is, and the Bills value something like that. So that does surprise me a little bit. But otherwise, these are guys who are good players, role players, who will get in there and do what they have to if they're called upon. So, no, there were no major surprises.
You see Shane Buechele getting cut by Buffalo on December 20th?
If there's a circumstance,
Do they
yes.
play the Chiefs December 19th?
Yes. I was wondering about that. I mean, I assume that everybody signs an NDA.
Well, most of the guys who are on the practice squad, sure, they can be released if somebody else comes in and you have to have a place on your roster. But does it happen that often? Probably not.
Well, I mean, don't you think that there's probably verbiage in your contract that says you cannot disclose that information?
The playbook. I don't know how they.
How could you govern something like that?
Yeah, that I think the governing of that would be the toughest part. I bet that the front offices of these teams want something like that, but I don't know how you would enforce it.
I think the governing. Oh, sorry, Ned. The governing kind of comes from the fact if you can sign players off other teams' practice squads, but you are required to hold on to them. I believe it's a minimum of 3 weeks.
That's
so
probably right.
That's the governing. It's so that you can't just go sign another team's practice squad the week before.
Who's the defensive guy that the Denver Broncos got from the Chiefs in
Neil
the
Smith.
offseason?
Not Neil Smith.
That was years ago.
No. This is a defensive tackle or defensive lineman. The Broncos.
Frank Clark.
Frank Clark.
Yeah.
Frank Clark. And they got him specifically for that reason.
Yeah.
And Coach Payton says, hey, bring this guy on. He knows the Chiefs and he knows their mindset and all that. So, I mean, it governs it right there. Sure, you can give away. Are you going to give away game secrets? Of course not. They wouldn't even have access to them. But in terms of the philosophical approach, you bet.
Were you surprised, Alec, about Shane Buechele?
A little bit, but at the same time, as a Mizzou fan, I like Blaine Gabbert, so I enjoy seeing him. He's already got to win a Super Bowl behind Tom Brady, so let's keep padding that resume, and maybe he can win another one behind Mahomes. But ideally you don't want to carry more than 2 quarterbacks on your roster. There's just the odds of injury at that position just tend to be lower than the guys that are getting battered every single play.
Didn't used to be that way.
Well, wait a minute. You're a fan of a team that had to start a wide receiver, right?
Not recently. Denver had to do that.
Yeah, it was Denver last year.
Denver had to do that last year where they had to start again. He did admirably for a guy thrown into the fire like that.
Right.
But so I guess I wasn't especially, I think we all knew going into this preseason for the most part, this starting 22 was set. They knew who their first 11 on each side of the ball was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
So they held their tryouts. They kept who they thought gave them the best depth, but I don't think there was anything too shocking about the cuts that were made.
What about you, Joshua? Anything catch your eye or ear as you heard the week after the Chiefs practices and their cuts?
As far as cuts, no. I'll tell you, I was impressed with the depth that the Chiefs showed in the defensive line and linebackers, which that's what I was looking at because I wanted to see if they were going to be capable of being a top-tier defense, even if Chris Jones doesn't sign. And I think they can. I think they can be that because their starters are very solid, and they've got some good depth. The guys that were playing hard in those preseason games were doing really well. I mean, the Chiefs are not going to hold it. They're not going to have shutouts. That's just not the way that their game plan is because they don't have to. They don't have to rely. They're not like the Baltimore Ravens that year that Watson Dilfer won a Super Bowl when they would go out and say, I mean, Ray Lewis would tell him, get us 2 touchdowns and we'll win the game. And that's what they'd win 14-0, But the NFL is really not that way anymore. Defense doesn't stop you cold very often. And so I was impressed with that. As far as the Buechele thing, man, he blew it in the first preseason game with that interception to a defensive lineman that he threw. And I think that because of what you guys are saying about how they already had they knew who their starting bunch were going to be, it was easy for them to say, all right, well, he's just not going to cut the mustard this time. And they gave him plenty of opportunities in the other games as well. But, he just didn't make it.
Another move that caught people's attention this week is that the Chiefs claimed Darius Rush off waivers from Indianapolis. He's a cornerback. There was some kind of grumbling around Chiefs Nation about L'Jarius Sneed, and will he be ready to go on
apparently
Thursday?
He will not be.
So,
apparently he's going to be injured and out of action. So, bringing in the Rush kid is very good. South Carolina star player who really, I think, ran afoul of the Indianapolis Colts somewhere along the line, so they put him on waivers. But what Joe was talking about, no, it was not Joe.
that guy over there.
J.O.
It was the fact of the matter remains, so you've got to prepare for the injuries. And the Chiefs have pretty good stable of running backs. You've got Pacheco back there, but he has been banged up. He has a shoulder problem. He's probably going to play. Jerick McKinnon is 32 years old, still capable of playing. But if either one of them goes down, then you have the Pirine kids who they can call up from the taxi squad or the practice squad. And he had a great summer camp. So, indeed, you've got the depth there. That's the one key for the Chiefs, I think, that oversees everything else. They are a deep team, and their depth factor really comes to the fore.
One name that didn't get mentioned by any of us, but is a little bit of a surprise, at least to me, that he is still with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I think he has some trade value, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Mm-hmm.
Are you surprised that he's still with the team?
I thought I'd see his name cut, but I did not. He's still there. They got him as a backup as well. And I think, well, for one thing, he's in the final year of his contract. So if he were not to be picked up by anybody, the Chiefs are responsible for that. So let's get some value out of him. Let's keep him on here and see what happens.
Boy, he slipped all the way to third string for this team.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alec, I mean, could you see the Chiefs trading him at some point before the season begins, or even as the season goes along?
I think he stays, Pat, so long as Pacheco's health is a question mark, because I think what the product they put on the field, Pacheco seems to be the better back for this system, but he runs so hard. It just seems to be that, he's got an injury already nagging him from the end of last year. The odds of him picking up another one, I bet, are pretty good, unfortunately. And at a position like running back, where attrition we've talked about is very high, because the play either ends with you running into the end zone or you getting the snot knocked out of you. It seems to be one of the two things. And Pacheco welcomes hits. He runs into hits. He creates his own contact, which is a strength. Like I think that's a good thing, especially when he's as young as he is. But it also invites injury. And I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, when healthy, has shown that he can be a good running back. So I think he stays put so long as there's any kind of question mark about the health of Pacheco.
Distinct possibility that you could see him on the injured reserve list before too long, too, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he's injury prone.
Yeah, he is very injury prone. And I think that's why he slipped so much over the past couple of years. But I think that makes sense what Alex said. They're keeping him. The only reason I see for them to keep him is because Pacheco is not 100% right now. If they're confident in week one with Pacheco's health or with McKinnon or whoever else they were putting in there, I think they could very possibly trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because they could get something good for him. And it's all like you're saying, Ned, it's all about the war of attrition in the NFL is crazy. And so having depth is what makes you able to compete and get into the playoffs and do well.
Look at the Los Angeles Rams last year.
Yeah.
Here you have the reigning Super Bowl champs, and they were so banged up, so many injuries, and they simply couldn't recover.
Couldn't do it.
When we come back, we'll discuss what happened today in basketball and talk about college football, too. It's Ned Talk, brought to you by The Dive. I'm Patton.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
We're brought to you by The Dive on Patton. Take in all the NFL games and Chiefs games this year downtown at the Patton. Dive on Patton. What a great place. We were there for our Chiefs happy hour. Fantastic location. And the staff there is super nice. Great place for you to check out the games this season. They are helping bring Ned Talk to you today. Let's talk a little bit about college football. Our own Missouri State Bears were in action on Friday night. And Ned, you and I were talking before the show started. First half, fairly close game, 17-10.
And quite frequently when you see an FCS, a good FCS team like the Bears are, against an FBS, or I'm going to call it 1A and 1AA. I can't stand this acronym. 1A against a 1AA. This is what you're going to see, because the 1AA first string teams and first two units can stay with the other teams. Again, you have that kind of talent. It's the depth that makes the talent there, because you have fewer scholarships. And I think that came to the fore against Kansas, because the Bears were in this thing even into the middle of the third period. Excuse me. And then it began to get away from them. And each time the Bears threw a pick, and they threw 2 and maybe even 3 critical picks in that second half, you can see the defenders, oh, God, we've got to go back in there again now. Hey, that wears on you after a while, and it did on Missouri State. They're a good team. Anxious to see what they do next Saturday, because they go on the road to Martin, Tennessee. Played Tennessee Martin, who played numero uno yesterday, played Georgia, and lost to Georgia 48-7. That's a respectable score. I did see. Now I'm not being.
I completely agree with you, Ned. If you look at the top 25 teams and the scores this week, that is respectable.
I watched a little bit of it, and the Tennessee Martin team kids can get in there and hit. They're a pretty good football team. Bears will have their work cut out for them playing down there.
What was the biggest storyline for you yesterday with college football getting underway full scale?
I can tell you exactly what it is. There's a game between Michigan and East Carolina yesterday, and this is all part of the new contract, the new TV contract with CBS, NBC, and I believe Fox is the other one, that televises almost the entire CBS brand. Well, the Michigan East Carolina game was on Peacock, and Mike Tirico and Chris Sims were the announcers. Midway through the game, now keep in mind, the name of this whole presentation by all networks is Big Saturday. Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to shut your eyes for a second and just picture this. Here's the Big Saturday logo in their background. Well, Chris Sims covers up the BI. No, wait a minute. Yeah, the BIG, I guess, is what it is. And, I'm sorry. It covers up the SA. And Mike Tirico on the other side is positioned to where he covers AY, so you had the big what?
Turd. It said big turd.
And it was pointed out by the viewers on P. What in the world is this? Anyway, it's a faux pas. That's the biggest deal.
Well, if you pay attention to ESPN or any of the national media, the big story yesterday was Deion Sanders.
Right, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was an impressive win. TCU not what they were last year or the year before, but still, Colorado goes out there and plays some really good football. And talk a little bit, you and Alec, talk a little bit about the style of play that we saw yesterday.
Colorado is much, much better from what they were 1-11 last year in a really slow, methodical game. Well, this is not. Deion has brought in a high-level, high-powered game. His son is the QB. I think it's Sheldon Sanders, whatever it is. The kid only threw for 502 yards. It's a wide-open offense, not a lot of running. There is a lot of passing, and it's flat passes or bubble screens, and they have the speed on this Colorado team to get away with that. Now, having said all that, Texas Christian is nowhere near what they were last year. They've lost a lot of players, and their skill level is simply not a runner-up to national champion as they were last year. But still, that takes nothing away from Colorado. They have a much-improved program. They play the Huskers. They play Nebraska next week in Boulder. Interested to see how they do in this one. I view Colorado as being better, but how much better, because they'll have a pretty tough schedule. Got Southern Cal, UCLA, the remaining Pac-12 in its final year of life on this earth. They have those teams to play, and that'll be a pretty good challenge.
What did you think of watching it, Alec?
It's definitely he's building up what was advertised. I think he wants it to look fun. He wants it to be a show, because this is going to help him continue to bring in recruits. People want to play for Deion Sanders. You can anything you want to say about him off the field with the theatrics. You call it a circus, whatever you want to say. He's still a Hall of Fame NFL player who was one of the best two-way and 2 sport athletes we've ever seen. So he's going to draw talent. He's already got it with his son there. He's got, I believe it was Travis Howard is the name, who played wide receiver and corner with great success on both sides yesterday. But I'm with you that TCU might not be quite what they were at the end of last year, but it's still not to take away anything from going on the road and beating the national runner-up in their house when you were more than a 20-point underdog. So Colorado's going to be better, and if you don't like them, that's probably too bad because they're going to be on TV every weekend.
Josh, you're our Alabama fan. You're also our resident conspiracy theorist. Wouldn't the networks love it if at the end of the year Deion Sanders was standing on the sideline in the playoffs?
Oh, gosh, of course they would love it. That would draw a lot of fans, a lot of money, a lot of advertising. Look, here's the thing. Week 1 of college football is usually very pedestrian, and it was very pedestrian this week, except the unranked Colorado, unproven Colorado, went out there and beat the number 17 team in the nation, TCU. So they're the story of the week because most of the other teams destroyed who they played because they were playing Division 1A or Division 2 teams or lesser teams in Division 1. And so it's impressive. I mean, I give Deion Sanders a lot of credit. He's done a great job already with that program, turning them back around to winning a big game right out of the gate. So we'll see how it goes this season. I mean, people should be excited about that. It's somebody new. I mean, I'm an Alabama fan, so I want them to win the national championship every year, but I know everybody else in the world gets tired of Alabama being in the Final Four. So here's an opportunity for you to root someone who hasn't been there in years.
He had he being Deion Sanders, very interesting statement to make in an interview. He was, believe it was before the game, if I'm not mistaken, but whenever it was, he said, a lot of people are on my case because 71 players left after the spring game. He said, it's all by design. Don't be misled. They are players who did not want to be around. We have new players in. We only have 3. He said, we only have 3 players remaining from last year's team. 3 players is all. We brought in new players who do want to play. They do want to follow my scheme of things. And to that end, I think it showed itself yesterday because while it's not a highly intellectual scheme, it is high-powered. And you better know your game plan when you go in to take on a wide open. It's a run and shoot, but mostly a shoot type game because the Sanders kid can throw the ball.
Let me ask you this and get your opinion on this as we go into the break from the 3 of you. It's often been said that a college football coach, especially in this day and age, is really not a coach. He is a CEO of a corporation. And maybe he doesn't need to know the X's and O's as much as the guys that he has hired beneath him. And that big personality like Deion Sanders, and the other person I think that is the model for this is Nick Saban. And I'm not going to sit here and say Nick Saban doesn't know X's and O's, but do you see that as being the model going forward for college football?
Joe, it always has been. It's the head coach. The head coach is the boss. He rules everything. He has all the schemes, and he is the front piece to the media. Does he call the game plan? No, his assistant coaches are the ones who present that to him. Then he gives the okay for it. But in terms of actual coaching on the sidelines, it's the position coaches who do that. Deion is right there. He was yesterday. Saw the kid fumble the ball down at the 20-yard line. Deion did something I absolutely love. They took a picture of him on the sideline, had his hands around the kid's shoulder pads, talking to him gently, and then swatted him on the backside and said, now get out. That's how you coach. Just like that.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Alec?
I think the biggest thing for Deion right now, I've said it again before, I'll say it again, is just it's going to be hard for any of these coaches to go into a kid's living room and pitch their school, especially when they know either I'm talking to Deion Sanders next or that was Deion Sanders that left before this. And I've been to Boulder, Colorado. It's gorgeous. He's got a beautiful town. He's got probably a beautiful campus, and he's Deion Sanders. And, whether he knows the X's and O's super well or not, he's going to be able to get talent to that school at a rate they haven't seen before. And it might take a while because they had such high turnover after this year, but let it build. Watch as these incoming 5-star freshmen become sophomores, juniors. And I think they're building something. I don't know if they're going to end up being able to consistently compete with what like Georgia and Alabama are putting out right now, but it's an arrow trending up.
Josh?
Well, I completely agree with you. I think at this point, head coaches rely on their offensive and defensive coordinators and position coaches to control the game. They have the headset. They're listening to the plays that are being called, and they have that veto right if they don't think that's going to work.
Oh, that's right.
Because I've seen Nick Saban do it. I've seen him yell at his coordinators because he's like, why did you call that? Don't do that again. But I think that does open up those head coaches to do exactly what you're talking about, Ned, to coach the player in a situation that they need to be able to say, look, it's okay. You fumbled. It's all right. Everybody does it. Don't let it ruin the rest of your day. Get back out there and make us a play, make plays for us. So, yes, in that sense, they're like the president of a company or the CEO, and then the people below them are the ones that are doing the actual play calling and system calling. But they have immense input in that as well. I mean, they're not just letting those guys design.
No, I don't think that. But it's interesting to see how this plays out. That a lot of other universities are probably going to look at this. And Deion Sanders is let's just say right out, he's one of a kind.
Yeah.
Whether you like him or whether you don't like him or whatever, there's not many Deion Sanders out there in the world. There's just not. So teams are not going to be able to replicate this with all over. But I think that you're going to see teams that are going to look at big personality NFL players that maybe are better suited to, be the suit and tie, be the front man in front of things and go,
the hype.
Yeah, that works. And I've got some really good guys behind me that know what they're talking about. So, and that will help with recruiting and money and
you can also look at, Kirby Smart was Alabama's defensive coordinator for 8 or 9 years.
Dabo Sweeney at Clemson.
Dabo Sweeney coached for Alabama before he became a head coach. So you do get those guys that move up into that role because of their talent and because of their success. And so it is interesting to see that Deion Sanders, being less of a proven coach, comes into this situation and he's got that success. But it's exactly what you're talking about. He's a unique person. The whole dynamic is unique with him.
I would say he's a confidence man.
Oh, for
and
sure.
You know what confidence men do? They sell confidence.
That's right.
And he's selling confidence, and you know what? When it works, it works. It is Ned Talk, brought to you by The Dive on Patton. We'll be back, and we'll talk a little basketball next.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
And we're brought to you by The Dive on Patton, taking all the Chiefs games downtown this year. And the first one is coming up on Thursday, Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. Our broadcast day for the Chiefs begins at 5 o'clock with Ned Talk. 6 o'clock will be the Chiefs pregame show. And they kick off, what weird time are they kicking off at?
The Thursday night game?
Yeah.
7:20.
Yeah, it's always some weird time.
Yeah.
Yeah, not some straight up time.
That's TV calling the shots as usual.
Those TV people. They're awful. I was sitting here this morning waiting for you to show up, Ned, and I was watching the World Cup, and USA not doing too well. They lost.
That's not a surprise. Lithuania is a very, very, very good, solid, fundamental basketball team that has 5 NBA players on there, or 5 current or former NBA players, and they fit the image of international basketball. Like all of the Eastern European, I can't say all, that's an unfair statement, but almost all, the Eastern European teams, they shoot from the distance very, very well. Their first, get this, guys, the first 9 threes that they threw up went in. They were a 9 for 9 on 3-point shots. Had a 21-point lead on USA in the first quarter. That's where they won the game, in the first quarter. USA came back, but the styles of play really came into, I think, the fore here because the Lithuanian team is huge. They're very big. Are you guys familiar with second chance shots?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is when you miss and you get. They outdid the USA 17-2 on second attempts. That's how much they horsed the boards and got those second shots. They're really, really good. They won the game 110-104. USA made a very nice comeback. Styles of play completely different. Lithuania, basic style, shoot the ball from the perimeter very well. They're big underneath to get those second chance shots. USA doesn't shoot the ball from the perimeter all that well. They drive, fast pace, get down there, horse the ball in underneath, and when you're horsing it in or trying to against a bigger opponent, that's going to come back to haunt you. So the slow start really did cost them. There is a chance that these teams play again for the World Cup title. Loss, you're not out of it. They will be from here on in. But in this particular group, you got USA has won their way into the quarterfinals. They're into the quarterfinals, and their first quarterfinal match is Tuesday or Wednesday, forgotten which. They'll play Italy. The Italian team is good, not great, but good. They have maybe one or two NBA players on there. But that's who the USA will play. If they win that one, then they go on into the semifinals, and this is where you get knocked out. One loss, and you're sayonara in this one. But the Lithuanian team, it's a loss, 110 to 104. But they're a very good team.
This is America, though. We don't like to lose to Lithuania.
Well, you see these guys dressing in NBA uniforms. I think you pronounce his name Velasunius, if I'm not mistaken, is the leading scorer in the New Orleans Pelicans. Another kid from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Another one from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'd tell you their names, except I can't pronounce them.
We especially don't like losing games that we created.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'd like to see anyone's record. If a team's winning percentage when you start 9 for 9 for 3 is probably pretty high, because that is most college teams, if they rolled out and started 9 for 9 from 3 even against an NBA roster, that's
27 points.
That's
right
a big
there.
deal. That's hard to overcome. So I give the United States credit for the comeback they made and attempt. But, if someone eventually it hits a point where if ball's just going in the hoop for the other side, all you can do is shrug and go, good shot.
Tip your hat to them, say, hey, good.
Let's switch gears and talk about baseball for just a little bit. Unfortunately, the Kansas City Royals have an E next to their name, which means that they have been eliminated from any sort of playoff competition for the year. I think if you get an E, you should just call it a day. You just really should
forfeit the rest of them.
Yeah. Cardinals are still holding down last place. They are 5 games back of Pittsburgh. So it looks like that there's a very distinct possibility the Cardinals are going to finish in last place this year.
Well, Pirates have won the first two games of this series, and then play again this afternoon. I think I was looking forward to last night's game because the Rom kid was the pitcher kid they got from the Baltimore Orioles. He started out well and then faltered a little bit. Pittsburgh's on a roll. They've won, I think, is it 6 in a row, 5 in a row or 6 in a row. Mm-hmm. They swept the Royals, and now they come into St. Louis, and of all teams to have their way against the Cardinals this year, it's the Pirates, who St. Louis used to utterly own, but they don't now. Pirates are pretty good and do have a young and very aggressive lineup. They're not going to win anything this year, but, hey, finishing in 4th place, again, ahead of the Cardinals, I think would be very good for them. Very good.
And that division's kind of shook itself out the way that you thought that it would. And Milwaukee's beginning to pull away a little bit.
Well, they're a good team. They're playing the Phillies this weekend, and I think Milwaukee's won the first 2 in that series. But Philadelphia is in pretty good shape for being the first wild card team, I should say, in the playoffs, if it does work out that way. Milwaukee's good. They have a good pitching staff. Their offense is better as opposed to what it was last year. So, they could be a force. And then you have to remember, guys, when you get to the playoffs, everything gets thrown out. You're starting with a clean slate.
And the big matchup that everybody has been watching this weekend so far has gone to the Braves. They took the first 2 games of that series against the Dodgers.
So they are playing L.A., and the next on the Atlanta Braves schedule, the St. Louis Cardinals in Atlanta. Oof.
Rally starts now.
Atlanta looks really good still.
Yeah, they do look like a really good baseball team right now. And it's interesting to watch these races from week to week as we talk about them here. Seattle's on top of the American League West right now. They've climbed over the Rangers, who faltered really, really badly after the trade deadline. And Houston is faltering right now, too. They're playing my Yankees, and they've lost the first 2 games of that series to them. Those should be wins for them. But the Yankees, after getting rid of Josh Donaldson and Harrison Bader, have gained some steam here.
Bader surprised me. Donaldson did not. He's not a good teammate in the clubhouse, according to all the stories, and he certainly hasn't proven himself to be the offensive threat that he used to be. He's over the hill.
But he got picked up right away, I believe, by Milwaukee. I
Milwaukee,
think they signed him. Where did Bader go?
Cincinnati.
That's right. Interesting to watch how the rest of that division shakes out in the National League Central as the season goes on, because Cincinnati, I saw an interesting statistic this morning. They've come from behind in the last 2 games to beat your
Cubs.
Chicago Cubs.
I know.
46 games this year. They've come from behind to win. That's an interesting statistic.
Joe, while you have those standings up there, what is Seattle's lead in the American League West?
I think it was 1 game is what I saw.
Seattle's capitalized on a hot
1
run
game.
here recently where they
It's only 1 game.
it's like they had to go on a tear just to get there. And Texas had to go on a slump for them to meet it. But I think that AOS is probably going to be the most exciting finish of all the divisions right now, other than maybe Baltimore and Tampa Bay in the AL East.
Well, Baltimore's. Yeah, I think they're the class of the American League, and they've stayed pretty much at arm's length from Tampa Bay. I don't know if they have any more games left this season with each other, but whatever Tampa does, Baltimore is able to do it, and they've held that 2.5, 3-game lead through most of this time. Let me ask you, Ned, especially as we go into the break here. What do you think that what we saw with the Angels this week will be a coming trend in baseball? And that is, if you're out of it, do a salary dump.
Oh, yeah, they've always done that. Not always the Angels, but other teams, when you see that you're gone, they've tried to eliminate salary. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Pittsburgh Pirates did it last year. Cincinnati Reds did it to some extent. So, it's not unusual for them. What will be unusual, in my thinking, as far as the Angels are concerned, if they allow their big stud player to go free agent, I think they're going to try to sign him. Of course, it's up to him. This is Shohei Ohtani.
Well, I think the interesting way that it was done, though, this year, Ned, was the waiver wire. With them getting rid of a bunch of players and not really getting anything for them, just putting them out there on waivers.
It's a chance that you take.
Because they bought it. They bought at the deadline. The Angels did. They were ready
August
to go.
31st. That's right.
And then it didn't pan out, so now they can't do trades anymore. So you try and cut and run for salary. But all of baseball, them included, are bracing for that Ohtani sweepstakes, which got way more interesting with the elbow injury he suffered.
Randall Grichuk, he is the guy that's going to keep the Los Angeles Angels over the salary cap or over the salary threshold, and they'll have to pay a luxury tax next year because nobody claimed him off waivers. When we come back, we'll tell you what we're going to watch on TV this afternoon, and we'll do a little talk about our NFL predictions for the season. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, brought to you by The Dive. I'm Patton.
Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. Part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Yep, and we're brought to you by The Dive on Patton. Great place to check out the Chiefs games this year. First one coming up Thursday. We'll start our broadcast at 5 o'clock with Ned Talk, followed by the Chiefs pregame with about 1,000 people on that show. And then it'll be the Chiefs and the Detroit Lions, 7:20, all right here on 104.7 The Cave. And remember, we do have that broadcast set up so you can watch it on your TV and listen to Mitch and Danon do the game. You may have to pause, but it does work out because the mad genius Corbin Campbell has done all that for us. So we're a big... when we do the show, we talk a lot during the season about the NFL season being quarters, just like a game. Mm-hmm. And so the first quarter of the Chiefs' schedule looks like this: Detroit, Jacksonville, Chicago, New York Jets. What's your prediction for how the Chiefs come out of that first four games?
The first 4 games?
Yep.
4-0.
Alec?
I'm going to take a 3-1 just because we saw what happened in Indy last year. Hiccups can happen. I feel like elite teams especially tend to suffer those question mark losses early.
What about you, Josh?
Well, that's interesting because I was wanting to mention how blown away I was watching the Jets preseason. That team is scary, not just because of Aaron Rodgers.
They're the Jets, though.
Yeah, I know. They are the Jets. So hopefully they continue their mediocrity, but their defensive depth is what the Chiefs aspire to have. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs are 3-1, and that's the one you need to mark on your calendar because that Jets team is going to be a force to be reckoned with this season.
I mean, Detroit very much improved from last year. They're going to give the Chiefs a tough game. I think the Chiefs will win that game. Jacksonville's the one that I kind of look at and kind of scratch my head at that one. I think they'll beat the Jets, but the Jacksonville game could be one where the Chiefs let down a little bit, and that's a team that feels like they've got something to prove.
4-0.
I like your thinking.
All right, Ned says mark it down on the calendar, 4-0. What are you going to watch on TV this afternoon, Ned?
Watch a little bit of the Cardinals-Pirates game, and then later on this evening, I want to see the Florida State LSU because I think that you'll see men out there playing football. This is not small college stuff.
No.
What about you, Alec?
Nothing this afternoon. Got a fancy football draft going on, so I'll be focused
Another
on that
one?
in the afternoon. I
How
know.
many drafts are you in?
This is my third and final, and I know it's one more than my sweet spot, but it is what it is. But this evening, I wouldn't be shocked if I check in a little bit on that Florida State LSU matchup.
And Josh, you.
This afternoon, I'm not watching anything, but I'm going to watch the LSU Florida State, and I'm going to root for Florida State because it's LSU.
You like the Knowles, don't you?
No, I just
He
don't
doesn't
like
like LSU.
I will not root for the SEC. I will not root for Auburn or LSU or Tennessee ever.
Yankees have been winning, and I haven't been watching, so I will not watch the Yankees and hope that they sweep tonight over the Houston Astros.
Is that the NBC game?
That's
the ESPN.
It's the ESPN game.
Oh, I don't mean NBC.
And they have this little, when they show the monitor when somebody's dying on TV, and it's like, boop. That's what the Yankees are. This, boop.
There you go.
Boop.
I love the superstition associated with baseball.
Yes, it is. It's great. When I coached, I wouldn't step on the lines. It was just like Sparky Anderson. I wouldn't step on the lines.
I get it.
All right, we'll see you guys Thursday night right here on 104.7 The Cave when we do Ned Talk. It's your local live sports talk show brought to you by The Dive on Patton. Thanks to Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts, Nick Fury, Corbin Campbell, the Mad Genius, Brian Tyndall, and the vacationing Mike the Intern. See ya!